Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. The government shutdown hits day 22. Now it's the second longest U.S. in history, and both are under President Donald Trump. 2 drug boats targeted in U.S. strikes, 5 people killed in the Pacific. Where's the evidence? The American people want to know. The Supreme Court may force Congress to finally draw limits on executive power. And the U.S. quietly shuts down a website tracking human rights abuses, and silence follows. A top Anglican archbishop accused of misconduct, and a bishop faces trial for abuse. I wonder, is there a website where you can track all these archbishops that are committing all of these sexual acts against our children? So basically, this is Washington's D.C. worst stalemate yet, because the federal government shutdown just passed day 22, making it the second longest in U.S. history. And unfortunately, both of these have been under President Donald Trump. Let's dive a little bit deeper inside this particular story. Now, it goes on to state that this is the second longest federal funding lapse in U.S. history, and both have been under President Donald Trump. The longest shutdown began in December 2018 in Trump's first term and dragged for nearly 5 weeks. And that shutdown stemmed from a dispute about funding Trump's contentious immigration policy. So we know that this one is about health care, because the current shutdown resulted from Senate Democrats refusing to vote for a short-term government funding bill sponsored by Republicans because it lacks additional spending on health care and other provisions, okay? It goes on to state that Democrats want any funding bill to extend enhanced tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, without which health insurance premiums for millions of Americans could rise significantly in 2026. And those credits are set to expire at the end of the year. And Republicans have accused Democrats of holding the government hostage and have refused to negotiate on healthcare issues until after the shutdown is over. A Republican-backed bill that would solely grant funding to the U.S. military failed in a procedural vote last Thursday. So it seems as though that the Democrats are not budging on this. And I have thoughts, not to state that they are backed by any evidence or information, but I think the Democrats are basically tired that the Republicans in some way or form is making up and transforming the American government totally right wing. And I've been hearing this for quite some time, that America is at this point more than 50% right, like meaning that you guys are Republicans or you have Republican mindsets. And I don't want to include being conservative, because conservative, it connects itself with the Republican Party, but it doesn't mean that you're a Republican and you stand on what the Republicans are trying to do, essentially. Because again, we're talking about over 5 million Americans will lose health care if the Affordable Health Care Act is not extended and or funded for another year. And there's been people who contribute themselves to be Democrats as well as Republicans stating, no, we need this health care to be extended. So the Democrats are actually fighting for health care for both Democrats as well as Republicans. They may have it seem as though that the Democrats are holding, the country hostage. But then I dial back just a little bit with this, because as I read this last sentence, that a Republican-backed bill that was solely, meaning only, grant funding to the U.S. military failed in the procedural vote last Thursday. Why the military? Why not fund the military and those soldiers, those troops, those naval men and women, those airmen and women? I don't know if the Coast Guard is federally funded under DOD, but I would like to believe that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But nonetheless, these people, the military is not being funded. Like right now, they're being funded by some special fund that Congress had. But when that money runs out and the government budget is not being passed, then those military members will not receive their paychecks. So I want you guys to really think about that. So again, on some accord, I see what the Democrats is doing. They want to make sure that, 5+ million Americans have Affordable Health Care Act that will sustain Medicaid costs and not rise in tension to have, more than 5 million Americans without health care. That would be just chaotic to the healthcare system, that 5 million people no longer have coverage, let alone the amount of people that don't have coverage today, especially a lot of our people who are unsheltered. But then I disagree with a portion of this because it's solely granting funding to the U.S. military, and that hits home for me. So I just wonder, why not solely funding? Is this a larger play? Is this applying more pressure now that the military members won't be getting paid? I don't know. I have a couple of quick updates for you guys when it pertains to the news, so I won't be here before you long. I just want to make sure I kind of get my thoughts out about some of this, because we're living in a very contentious time in America. Some people allude that, it's because of the Trump administration. It's because of the liberals. It's because of this, because of that. I don't know what to call it, but I would say that this is a very trying time in America, more so than any other time that, in my opinion, that I was alive. Now, some people say it was under Biden, it was under Obama, it was under the Trump's first administration. There's a lot going on, more so than any other time that I've been alive, and that's just my personal opinion. Please leave your comments down below. If you're new to Blacklogic, hit that subscribe button and like button and let me know your thoughts. Now, I also want to touch on this story because the U.S. Navy and the military actually carried out deadly strikes on 2 suspected drug smuggling vessels in the Eastern Pacific, killing 5 people in what the administration calls a new front in the war on narcotics. And again, these were suspected narcos that was trying to travel in the Pacific Ocean. And again, the only thing, and I know some of you may have questions, not all, some people may just fall in line with the government, but no, we have to question our government just as well we've questioned our government on everything else. There are some things, whether you be a Republican, Democrat, or independent, that you question the government, and other things you fell in line with. This is one of the things I just question the government. Where is the evidence that stated that these are narco terrorists, that they're actually smuggling drugs? Okay. It says that the Trump administration has now carried out 9 known strikes against alleged narcotic trafficking boats since last month, leading to at least 37 deaths. The first 7 strikes were within the Caribbean Sea, but this week the tragedy brought into the East Pacific. The first strike took place on Tuesday with 2 people killed. A defense official confirmed that the vessel was in international waters off Colombia. A second strike took place on Wednesday, according to Hegseth, killing 3 more. So again, we have all these people being unalive, but our government is not producing evidence or proof, or even drugs. Like, again, if it's cocaine, if it's heroin, if it's marijuana, whatever it may be, to collect some of that evidence. You mean to tell me that when you guys are doing these strikes, some of the people survived? Like in the last attack, some of the people survived, but none of the drugs. All the drugs were wrapped in plastic and barrels, and it exploded, and the cocaine dissolved inside of the water. And in that case, take fish samples, take samples of the water. There must be some residue, some trace amounts. I don't know, take a dolphin, take some fish or whale. Someone is drinking the cocaine, heroin, or eating the weed that supposedly these drugs are on these vessels. Just provide proof to the American people that you're using millions and billions of our dollars in stopping harmful drugs to reach the American shores. Because if you provide proof, none of us will have nothing to say. Okay? Whether it be government and then a third party, okay, that is very neutral to all the political parties. So again, we have that oversight that, they're just using propaganda and coming up, trumped up evidence and creating evidence so the American people can stop asking questions. No, have a third party oversight that don't pertain to any, party, whether it be independent, just like you did with Doge, supposedly. But anyway, I digress, because I think that's very important for us to know where our millions and billions of dollars are going to, and not that you're just making a 90,000 square foot, $250 million ballroom for the White House. I know it's a thorn in my side every time I think about it, because we were reaching $38 trillion in debt. Now, the Supreme Court is now primed to decide whether Congress can keep pushing power onto the president, meaning that the court may force the legislative branch to act instead of cede control. So when it comes to this particular story, let's go inside the text here, because it stated that on Sunday, President Trump once again raised the possibility of invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807 to deploy American troops in U.S. cities. And previously, in response, Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois had denied that the president had such power and authority, arguing that the Insurrection Act is called the Insurrection Act for a reason. There has to be a rebellion. There has to be an insurrection in order for him to be allowed to invoke it. Although the governor's point may be rhetorically compelling, the actual text of the law appears to give the president the discretion to use the military for law enforcement purposes. The pertinent section states that the president, by using the militia, i.e. the National Guard, or the armed forces, or both, shall take such measures as he considers necessary to suppress, had a little jump there in the text. Here we go. Give me 1 second. Thank you. To suppress in any state, any insurrection, domestic violence, unlawful combination, or conspiracy, if it opposes or obstructs the execution of the laws of the United States or impedes the course of justice under those laws. So not only does it appear that the president has the discretion to use the military, the word shall implies that he has a duty to do so if the laws are being obstructed. And I would have to agree. I would have to agree. If that city, if that state is not taking every measure to curtail lawlessness in those areas, then the president, that is going to be backed by the Supreme Court, has the authority to do so. Here's the problem. They're just going after blue states. With the exception, I heard some rumblings that they may be deploying National Guard troops to Tennessee, Memphis, to be exact. But other than that, all the other states and cities are considered blue, meaning Democratic and liberal. There's violence in Republican-ran states and cities as well. And if we're going to do this, it should be all across the board. Now, if the American people are not understanding what's going on right now, let me put you up on game. You have the right trying to transform the government as well as the people and our ideology to lean far right. Whereas though the left for quite some time, whether it be under Biden, Obama, and other presidents, try to have the American people to think more liberal. Because think about what Obama did in office. He did more things for the LGBTQ community than he did any other community. You guys call him the first Black president. Some people call him the first mixed president. It does not matter. Now, I wanted to point this out, even though it has nothing pertaining to this particular news story. President Obama is not a foundational Black American, meaning that his lineage does not, stem back from the U.S. chattel slavery, that he had any ancestors in U.S. slavery. His father is from Kenyan and his mother is from Kansas. So he has basically no shared struggle or no shared history of a struggle in these United States of America. So fast forward to his administration, even when he was on a debate stage in 2008, between 2008 and 2010, when they asked him, are you going to do anything dealing with reparations for descendants of U.S. chattel slavery here in the United States of America? He said, what about reparations for North Carolina school system? So basically, he deflected that argument altogether. I digress. Basically, the only thing that Obama has done in office, and again, this is my personal opinion, this is my personal rhetoric, he created laws and legislation that gave LGBTQ rights. And that's why we have now all this transgenderism trying to be pushed into schools when Biden was into office, because again, it was like almost the same administration, but carrying on the agenda of what Obama and other left-leaning presidents have done. Number two, mass immigration, not with Obama, but with Biden, because when Obama was actually in office, they used to call him like the mass chief of deportation or something on those lines, because he deported a lot of people. But I want you guys to think about what Obama actually did in office, because he gave Jews reparations. Okay, if you look back, there's every year $12 to $15 million in earmark money went to Jewish Holocaust descendants of those survivors. Not only the Holocaust survivors, but as well as their descendants receive reparations from America, not Germany. They're still receiving reparations from Germany, no less, but also in America under Obama. And Obama also was giving millions acres of land to some of the 500 federal recognized Native American tribes. So again, he did nothing really for anyone else. Okay. Now, some of you are going to say, well, he did something for the American people when it comes to the Affordable Health Care Act, which the Democrats are trying to extend. That was for all Americans. But when people state that, hey, they can't do anything based upon race. Well, if you guys can't recall, when Biden was in office, you had the COVID-19 bill that gave specific protections for Asians in America. Specific protections for Asians in America. So again, whether it be Republican or Democrat, there's bad on both sides, there's evils on both sides, and there's always, we the American people are the tennis ball. The right hits it left and the left hits it right, and we just going back and forth. We're left, we're right, we're left. How many of you guys used to be Democrats and now Republicans? How many of you guys used to be Republicans and now Democrats? You get what I'm getting at? The ideology and propaganda of brainwashing that the government points out through all these mass media systems have been a useful tool in the system of white supremacy to have you to pick a side. Nobody wants to pick the side of truth, and nobody wants to pick the side of good. That's what I'm getting at. But I digress. I didn't want to stay there too long, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the U.S. has quietly shut down a website that allowed the public to report human rights abuses by foreign security forces armed by the U.S. military and the U.S. armed forces, a move critics say silence accountability. They had this website that used to report any militia groups, any U.S. armed, that means that the U.S. have given them weapons or did trade deals with weapons to a lot of these foreign forces. They're no longer reporting that because America, we have a staunch history of actually supplying our enemies with our own weapons. Because when we go to combat, when I went to Iraq, they don't just have AK-47s, they have M4s and M16s as well. Look what Biden did when we was in Afghanistan. He left millions of dollars of equipment, okay, in Afghanistan. Now they're rolling down the street in Afghanistan in MRAPs and up armored vehicles and Humvees. They're using the same equipment, but that was left because we tucked tail and we retrograded, as they would say, let's call a retreat, back to the U.S. And it was a debacle, okay? It was a debacle. It made the U.S. look very scarcely, okay? I digress. But there's been Republican presidents as well that have armed some of the same enemies that we fight today. Look at Iran. I digress. Again, they put down this website because no longer do we want transparency in America, even though that President Trump ran on a podium and a platform of transparency. There are some things that he's been transparent on, and then there's other things he's not. Okay, listen, there's no threat to U.S. intelligence if you tell us and provide evidence of all the vessels in the Pacific as well as the Caribbean Sea that's being destroyed and supposedly that are smuggling drugs inside of America. There's no threat to U.S. intelligence. There's no threat. Just provide the proof. Oh, well, what you need to understand is if they give that information, then they may follow the trinkets and traces of how they got that information and evidence. It can reveal people who are giving us vital intel. I know. I already know some of the arguments that people are going to make, but sometimes I leave it up to question. I'm reluctant to say a lot of things here, ladies and gentlemen, because I do want your comments and what your thoughts are. And sometimes I respond and sometimes I'm just like, okay, because some of the arguments I receive, they're just not violent. In my opinion, that may be violent to you guys, okay? But anyway, I want to carry on because this next story right here, because this has been going on for quite some time. Let me blow this up for you guys. Give me 1 second here. You guys see what's going on. And I know this is over in Europe, but we have the same problem right here in America with all of these archbishops within the Catholic Church and evangelical churches, all these reverends and pastors and archbishops and clergymen are doing some of the most despicable things with our children, both men and women, girls and boys. It's ridiculous. It's totally out of hand. It is totally out of hand because, and I might misspeak on some of these next accounts. Now, I'll give you my thoughts after this particular story, because that first story was out of York. This story is out of America, okay? This story is out of America because in this church realm, a top angelical archbishop faces a sexual misconduct accusation with a bishop stands trial for abuse of power, putting the institution's credibility under fresh scrutiny. Now, I pointed out a couple of things here. Archbishop Stephen Wood, okay, the single most official of the Angelical Church in North America, has been accused of sexual misconduct, with another top official has been accused of allowing men with troubling backgrounds to serve as church leaders. Let me blow it up even more. You need to see this. A former children's ministry director accused a 62-year-old Wood for putting his hand against the back of her head and trying to kiss her in his office in April of 24, 2 months before he was elected to his current role, according to a new church presentment. Stuart Rich Ranch III, a 50-year-old old bishop, who heads a diocese in the Midwest, is facing a trial on charges that he allowed men with histories of violence or sexual misconduct to worship or hold staff or leadership roles in dioceses. Now, you really never hear this with non-denominational, with Southern Baptists or Baptists. You have all these different sects of Christianity. Has it happened in those churches? Absolutely. Why is it more prevalent in the Catholic Church than other churches? That's my question. Why does it happen more so in the Catholic Church than other churches? Now, I'm gonna totally word this absolutely wrong because I forgot the correct construction of this, but nonetheless, these bishops go without having sexual intercourse with the opposite sex and with the same sex. Like they almost like they're male nuns. Okay. Is that correct? Please correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of these people within the hierarchy of, the Catholic Church under the head of the Pope and these cardinals and bishops, there's certain ranks and structures within Catholicism, within the Catholic Church, that a lot of these archbishop curl of bishops and all of these clergymen do not have sex. All right. They abstain from sex. They do not have it. But everything in nature tells you you're supposed to have sex. That is why you have a penis. You don't have a penis just to excrete waste out of your system. You have reproduction organ. And, it's a reason why you have X and Y chromosomes. It's to reproduce. God put us on this earth to reproduce. He said, go and be plentiful. So now you have women, nuns, who abstain from sex. And by the way, majority of nuns are over the age of 50. Are there some young nuns? Absolutely. But most of the nuns are under the age of 50. So is this a abstain from sexual intercourse problem, or we just have a rise in pedophilia? Not a rise. It's been going on for quite some time, probably the last 50, 60 years. Is this coming to light in the last 20 years or so? But nonetheless, are these just sick men that are committing these pedophilia crimes? Or is it because they sustain from sex and this is one of the symptoms of that? Listen, the whole Catholic Church, from the Pope on down, just change the rule. It's your rule. Just change the rule. Reword the lengths, however you go about doing it, so these archbishops can go and have wives. You rarely see that in non-denominational and Baptist and all these other, sects of Christianity. You don't see it in the Mormon church. You don't see it in Seventh-day Adventists. You don't see this. Am I stating that it hasn't occurred? I'm pretty sure it has, but not at the same rate and not the same volume and not the same amount. Just change whatever precedents and foundation that you found the Catholic Church on. Just change that one thing. Bishops and nuns can now have sex. Well, they wouldn't be a nun if they can have sex, Blacklogic. Listen, what is going on? Do something to stop this, because at the end of the day, there's innocent young boys and young girls being harmed. And this will affect them for the rest of their lives. I'll bring it full circle. I believe that Eddie Long was a Black reverend or pastor at a Baptist church. I may get the denomination of Christianity wrong. And he did some of the same things, because now majority of these bishops are white. Okay. Majority of these sexual crimes dealing with churches are white. But there are some Asians, there are some Blacks, and there are some white Hispanics and Hispanics that have been accused and charged for sexual crimes in these churches doing some of the same things. So I'm not just saying it's a Catholic problem, because it happened in the Mormon, happened in Seventh-day Adventists, happened in Baptists and non-denominational, but not at the same rate and same volume. This is a pandemic and epidemic inside of Catholicism. And maybe the foundation of the church, some of the laws that you guys live by need to change, because your children are being affected. And this is psychological warfare, because once they be violated, it never goes away. It never goes away. Now, there's many studies out there that will show you that majority of people, the majority of the population of the LGBT community was sexually abused, was sexually assaulted as young children. Majority of them. Now, some of you like, oh, I was born this way. Let's talk about your past. Let's talk about your history. Was it your uncle? Was it your aunt? Was it a cousin? Was it a close friend of the family? Was it someone within the church? That's what we're really not talking about. I'm not stating that every homosexual, gay person, transgender have a traumatizing past. I'm saying according to the studies and research, majority of them have it. They was molested. They were the R word continuously throughout the years. And they're talking about it's some sort of mind virus. Yeah, it's a mind virus. It's called being traumatized. It's called being abused. And that's where some of them are today. Not all, but a good portion of them, according to the research. Now, in case any of you want to know where you can research your bishop, your clergyman, there's a site that you guys can actually reference called bishopaccountability.org. They have databases of bishops and clergymen and reverends. Now, I know this is more dealing with Catholicism. As you see, the head at the top, a lot of them has, the cardinal headdress, and clergymen, the priests, and all of those things. But they have databases of those being accused. You may want to talk to your children. Like I said, this is a pandemic of sexual abuse of our children in a lot of these churches. And unfortunately, majority of this is within the Catholic Church. And because there's not too many Black Catholics, this is mostly affecting white people. So again, if you're a Catholic, no matter what race you are, okay, no matter what race you are, if you attend a Catholic church, if your daughter, if your son, you have the altar boys, you have young women working in certain facets of the Catholic Church, you may want to sit down and have a very serious conversation with them. But prior to that, there's more than one website. There's multiple websites that you guys can go ahead and research to see if there are any accusations against your bishop or clergyman dealing with sexual abuse, sexual assault, or sexual misconduct in any shape or form. So I just want to leave you guys with that, because again, our children are being harmed, and this darkness really needs to come to light. You guys have a great and wonderful day.